If you're watching this and you have not bought a home yet, you are in the right place. So this is a basic guide and understanding of what it's like to just go through the whole process of buying a home. And if you're interested in a more in-depth guide of what the whole process is like, because I'm gonna go through everything in this video. So if you wanna dive in a little bit deeper, I have classes on my YouTube channel to dive a little bit deeper about the whole process, especially house hacking. But this video is for the people that just want a taste of the whole process and want to know what it's like to go through it. So with that being said, let's get right into it. First things first, you gotta know what you want. For example, is it an investment property, a vacation home, a place for your new family? Are you relocating to Denver? Do you need a slide going from the outside balcony down to the main floor? All of that is stuff that I need to know as a realtor. And you also got to know what you need, not just what you want. For example, do you have 4 cars and you need a 2-car garage and ample off-street parking? Do you need a big backyard for your growing family and your dog? And lastly, you got to figure out what your timeline is. Are you trying to buy within the next month, then within the next 6 months, maybe the next 3 years? All of that has to be into consideration and just keeping that in your mind going forward. And step number 2, you gotta look for a realtor. And within this video, I'm gonna be using real estate agent, realtor, and buyer agents, all synonymously, but realtor is a little bit different than a real estate agent. And for example, a realtor goes through some extra ethics classes and making sure that they have a fiduciary responsibility to have your best interest in mind and all of that good stuff. But for the purpose of this video, I will mainly say realtor. So just keep that in mind. So if you were to ask me, I'd say work with a realtor, mainly because I'm a realtor. And if you're working with me, I like to ask my clients a certain question, and that is, how driven are you on a scale of 1 to 10 on buying your next home? So for example, I want to match your energy. If you are at like a 2 or 3, if you're just window shopping and you're like, I'm just sort of like looking at what's possible and what the market is like, and I'm at an 8 out of 10, I'm going to be looking like a salesman that's pushing you to try to buy at home, and I do not want that experience for you. On the opposite side, if you're at an 8 over here and you're just like, hey, let's go, let's do some showings, I got to see some properties, and I'm at like a 2 or 3, I'm looking like I'm not doing my job and I don't care about you, which is quite the opposite of what I want you to experience. So now that you found your realtor, you go on to the next step. Step number 3 of finding your lender and financing. And not all lenders are created equal. I mean, you got your Chase Bank, your Wells Fargo, your credit unions, and also even the smaller brokerages. They can all help you with financing your next property. And with the financing, you need to give them proper documentation so that they can give you a proper budget, especially if it's a monthly mortgage, right? So depending on what your taxes look like, your W-2 looks like, or if you're self-employed, your 1099s look like, all of that matters. And make sure you just give them all of that stuff so that they can give you a proper pre-approval and a proper budget. So what is a pre-approval? A pre-approval is like a sheet of paper that says, hey, this buyer can afford this purchase price, and it sort of gives the feeling of confidence to a seller, because what I like to do is send an offer with the pre-approval letter saying, hey, my buyer is very qualified to purchase this property. You have nothing to worry about on the financing side. And the pre-approval is super important between the buyer and the realtor, because a lot of realtors don't want to go on these showings unless they have a pre-approval. And that case is definitely the case for me as well, because I want to make sure that we're seeing properties that are within budget and they're not just, we're not just window shopping with something that's way out of your budget and we're wasting both of our times, right? So once you got your realtor, once you got your finances straight, once you got the pre-approval, we can really do the fun stuff of tour properties. Both you and your realtor will be looking for the right properties based on what your needs are and what your wants are and within budget. So all of that are factors in finding the perfect property for you. And make sure you give feedback to your realtor if they send you houses, right? So the main point of that is to filter out like the huge amount of houses that are on the market that fit your criteria. But as you start to put on more filters, you now start to get more select ones that fit your criteria even more perfectly. So once you compile a list of maybe 4 or 5 properties, and I would not recommend doing more than that unless you got some like notes, or maybe you're doing video recordings of the tour or things like that. and you're just exhausted at the end of the day. I mean, 5 properties is a lot of properties. Take it from me. I mean, I do them all the time, right? And if you're not taking those notes, the houses start to blur. You're like, okay, is that house with the high ceilings? Is that the one with the big backyard? Or was that the one with the 3-car garage? I'm not 100% sure. So all of that, as far as note taking goes and video recording, all of that, it all makes sense, just so that your ducks in a row. And with these showings, make sure you write down what you like, what you don't like, and from that point on, you finally find the right one and you want to put in an offer. So with writing an offer, you will coordinate with your realtor what the offer will look like. And that comes in the form of what the purchase price might be, with the down payments, the seller concessions, and all that good stuff. That's all written within the offer. So the realtor will give you the proper advice and guidance for the offer and perhaps give you a percentage chance of it being accepted going forward once it gets sent out to the listing agent. A lot of these times, these offers do not go to the seller themselves. It goes to the listing agent, and then the listing agent will, since they're representing the seller, they go through and offer their guidance, their advice with the seller separately. Ultimately, the realtor works for you. And even after all that guidance, all that advice, you still have the final decision of what the purchase price might be, all the down payment and all that good stuff. All of that is up to you and what the offer looks like. At the same time, the realtor has done dozens, if not hundreds of these offers before in that certain market. So they do have the experience and have seen a lot of what you're encountering right now. Let's say you put in an offer and the realtor says like, hey, there's a whole bunch of offers on this property. You might go into a bidding war, which is not the end of the world. If anything, price is not the only factor in offers. The seller might choose an offer that has, let's say, quicker closing dates, or let's say they want to sell to a family as opposed to an investor. All of those are all considerations, and it's not just the price point. So don't be discouraged if the price point that you put in your offer is a little bit lower than what they're asking for on the MLS. What you can also do is put in a backup offer, and I've gotten a lot of offers accepted as a backup offer in case the main offer that did get accepted does not go through to the closing table. Yours is next in line, and then you're under contract at that point. And speaking of being under contract, that is the next step. Once the offer is accepted, maybe some negotiations happen in the meantime, but the seller likes the offer, they sign it, you sign it, and congratulations, you are under contract. So now the fine tuning of negotiations happen, but before that happens, the earnest money deposit is next. And so what that is like a sort of skin in the game from the buyer saying like, hey, I'm in this, here's $5,000. Usually it's about 1% of the purchase price to make sure that the seller knows that the buyer is in the game. Let's say it's $5,000 with an earnest money deposit of $5,000 on a $500,000 home, which is very reasonable. It gets held in this escrow account and it goes towards the down payment if you were to make it to the closing table. And let's say, for example, you want to put 5% down on a $500,000 home. 5% on $500,000 is about $25,000. And so with you already putting $5,000 on earnest money, you have to just bring $20K to the closing table in regards to the down payment. There's other fees along with it, but I'll discuss it later. The bulk of the negotiations will happen after you get your inspection done on the home. Now, the inspection is a very nerve-wracking time, especially for first-time home buyers, because you're just trying to go through the ins and outs of what's wrong with this property so that you can ask for seller credits, ask for it to be replaced or repaired, and the realtor will guide you through all that process once it's all done. And I would highly recommend that you go to these inspections because at the end of the day, you hired this inspector and they will be checking a lot of things. For example, the roof, how, like if all the appliances work, the furnace, the flooring, and if there's any sort of like noticeable damage that you should be concerned with. However, there are certain things that are not part of the inspection, and I'm not going to go too far into it, but when you're there at the inspection, you can ask them, hey, what are you checking? What are you not checking? Is there any additional contractors that I should hire before the deadline of inspection so that I can make sure that I'm still making the right decision in pursuing this home? So with inspections themselves, they usually cost about $600 in Denver and can vary depending on who you use and whether you want a sewer scope and also a radon inspection. And so these costs, the inspection, the sewer scope, and also the radon test, those will all come out of your pocket. And once the inspection is done, usually it takes about 4-ish hours, depending on how big the home is. You will get a full-on report within maybe like 48 hours, and it will discuss everything that maybe you discussed in person with the inspector, and it's just laid out all on paper so that we can use that as a negotiation tool to lower, raise the price, whatever that might be. Next up is the appraisal, and the lender organizes the appraisal when that happens and all that good stuff, and to make sure that it happens within the deadline. And what it does is it verifies the value of the home. I'm sure lenders want to make sure that they're lending on an appropriately priced home. I mean, let's say it's a shack somewhere in the mountains, right? But you put an offer at $1 million. The lender doesn't want to put a loan of $990,000 on a shack. They want to make sure that it's properly valued. And there's a lot more to this. Trust me, there is a lot more to this, and you should ask your lender for more details on that stuff. And I have a lot of personal feelings on appraisals, but feel free to ask me about that stuff. And if you ever want to dig a little bit deeper on this, please contact me. All my contact information is down below. And if you're enjoying this already, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff so that I know that you're enjoying it, and a lot of people that will see this video will enjoy it as well. And with appraisals, they are an art as much as they are a science. So it's a little bit unpredictable, but a lot of times I tell my clients like, hey, we never know what it's going to appraise at. We might as well just go through with it if everything else looks great in the transaction. And the last stage is just closing, getting to the finish line here. And I would suggest to not quit your job, not finance anything, don't buy a car, just don't do anything crazy as far as life-changing events or anything like that until after you close on the home. Your lender will check on your finances even the day of closing to make sure that you're able to afford that home. I swear, you hear those stories of like the clients pulling up to the closing table with a brand new car, and as a realtor, I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you doing, right? That financed car is going to ruin the whole transaction, and you'll have to delay it or sell the car. It's a mess. Just don't do anything life-changing or finance anything until after closing. So on closing day, you will be bringing in a check or wiring the funds the day of with everything needed, and everything will be discussed with the lender prior to that day so you're not blindsided. Of course, with the documents there already, you gotta verify, hey, with these closing documents and what I've agreed to with the lender beforehand, is there anything else that has popped up that just escaped you or you were not prepared for or anything like that? Because sometimes that does happen. So don't be afraid to ask questions when you're there and you're reviewing all the documents, right? The person, the loan signing agent that's there will walk you through all the legalese and the wording and the language of what they actually mean. But if there's any red flags, don't hesitate to be like, okay, this is a little weird. I've never seen this before. I gotta ask someone about this. But at the end of the day, I'd say 95% of the time, if not more percent of the time, usually everything goes according to plan. And after everything is signed, congratulations, you are a homeowner. And with owning a home, you are paying a mortgage, right? But if you don't want to pay your full mortgage, hit me up because I specialize in that stuff. As far as like making your basement a full-on Airbnb or renting out all of your rooms so that you're living for free, all of that is definitely possible in almost any market that I've seen so far ever since I've been a realtor. So I want to make sure you are comfortable and you're making the right life decisions going forward. So I hope this clears up a lot of the questions and concerns that you might have with just understanding what the whole transaction process is like, especially as a buyer. And that's mainly who I work with here. And I love working with buyers because I'm a buy and hold investor myself, and I want to make sure that you're retiring as soon as possible with financial independence where you can work for a purpose and not a paycheck. That is my main mission here. So thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have any questions, like I said, all my contact information is down below. Feel free to call me, text me if you want to reach me, and I'll see you next week.